Think about this for a second. You build a massive global empire out of luxury casinos, towering hotels, and world-class golf courses. You become the literal face of extreme wealth and excess. Yet, you have never touched a single drop of alcohol in your entire life. Not one cigarette, no drugs. You are a documented germaphobe who runs a multi-billion-dollar brand on just 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. And your daily fuel? It isn't a private 5-star chef. It's primarily McDonald's, KFC, and a dozen Diet Cokes. Why? Because you have a deeply rooted fear of being poisoned. And fast food is prepared anonymously. It sounds like a fictional, wildly exaggerated character, doesn't it? But here is the truly mind-boggling part. This man, Donald J. Trump, took that exact, crazy combination of habits and pulled off something that everyone thought was straight up impossible. He became the only individual in the history of the United States to be elected president, not just once, but twice, with exactly 0 prior military or government experience. You'd think the political establishment would have stopped him, right? Let's look at the raw data of his 2024 comeback. He didn't just edge his way back in. On January 20th, 2025, he took the oath of office for the 47th presidency after locking down a decisive 312 electoral college votes. And he pulled off that victory while carrying the weight of 34 felony convictions for falsifying business records from May of 2024. He did it after literally surviving a televised assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th. The last time a U.S. president managed to win non-consecutive terms was Grover Cleveland, over 130 years ago. To understand how someone builds that kind of unshakable skin, you have to look at where it actually started. Because the story most people know isn't exactly how it played out on paper. He was born into Outer Borough, New York real estate on June 14, 1946. His father, Fred Trump, was a massive titan in his own right, building an empire of roughly 27,000 middle-class apartments across Brooklyn and Queens. Now, Trump famously said he started out on his own with just a small loan of $1 million. But if you dig into the hard tax records uncovered by a massive New York Times investigation, the data tells a much heavier story. Over his lifetime, Donald actually received the modern equivalent of at least $413 million from his father's empire. But don't mistake that wealth for a soft, comfortable upbringing. By the time he was 13, his behavioral issues were so out of control that his parents made a radical choice. In 1959, they stripped away his privilege and sent him straight to the strict New York Military Academy to learn raw discipline. Imagine that shift, going from a wealthy home to rigid early morning drills and harsh military structure. But it forced him to adapt. He clawed his way up to the rank of captain by 1964, and by 1968, he secured a Bachelor of Science in Economics from the prestigious Wharton School. And this is where you really start to see his crazy appetite for risk and how much he loved going against the crowd. He could have stayed in Queens. He could have safely collected rent on his dad's reliable apartments. But in 1976, at just 30 years old, he decided to gamble everything on Manhattan. And you have to remember, Manhattan in the mid-70s wasn't the glitzy, high-priced playground it is today. The city was literally on the verge of bankruptcy. It was dirty, crime-ridden, and most investors were running away. But Trump went straight toward the fire. He targeted the old, completely dilapidated Commodore Hotel right next to Grand Central. He didn't just buy it. He managed to talk a desperate New York City government into giving him a massive 40-year tax break worth a staggering $160 million. Just think about the sheer confidence it takes for a 30-year-old kid to walk into a room of hardened city officials and pull off a deal that massive. When the fully remodeled Grand Hyatt opened its doors in 1980, it was an instant hit. the kid from Queens had officially broken into the ultimate real estate market, proving right out of the gate that he wasn't just looking to inherit a fortune, he was looking to completely conquer the Manhattan skyline. By 1983, his momentum hits a tipping point. He spends $200 million to open the 58-story Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue, creating a physical monument to his own name. 4 years later, in 1987, he releases The Art of the Deal, and it completely dominates the charts, staying on the New York Times bestseller list for a staggering 51 weeks. He's flying high. But as with everything in his life, the peak is immediately followed by a brutal valley. In 1989, he tries to instantly monetize his fame with a board game called Trump the Game. It's an absolute commercial failure and gets yanked from shelves. And then, the entire floor drops out. By 1990, the aggressive expansion catches up to him. The numbers are staggering. He is drowning in $3.4 billion of corporate liabilities, and $900 million of that is his own personally guaranteed debt. Think about that level of financial suffocation. Most people would completely crack under that pressure. Over the next 2 decades, his companies file for corporate Chapter 11 bankruptcy 6 separate times, including the $1 billion Trump Taj Mahal collapse in 1991 and the Trump Plaza Hotel in 1992. He is forced to sit down with 72 different banks, ruthlessly handing over chunks of his equity just to keep the Trump brand alive. But here's the catch. He manages to completely avoid personal bankruptcy. Then comes 2004, the ultimate media resurrection. He premieres The Apprentice. The first season finale brings in an unbelievable 28.1 million viewers. Over 14 seasons, tax records reveal he pulls in a jaw-dropping $427.4 million from the show and brand licensing alone. The 1990s debt stigma completely washed away, and that massive TV comeback, that became the launchpad for him to basically hijack the entire political system. In 2016, he stuns the global establishment by defeating Hillary Clinton with 304 electoral votes. And he does it while spending less than half of what her campaign raised, roughly $322 million, compared to her $768 million. So, what actually makes a guy like this tick? How does he keep going? It starts with raw biology. He routinely runs on just 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. In his 2004 book, Think Like a Billionaire, he put it bluntly: how can somebody who's sleeping 10 or 12 hours a day compete with someone who's sleeping 3 or 4? Next, look at his rigid abstinence. That complete ban on alcohol and tobacco isn't a casual health choice. It's a deep emotional scar. In 1981, his older brother, Fred Jr., tragically died at just 43 years old from severe alcoholism. The trauma of that loss left Trump completely unyielding. But that absolute need for discipline takes a strange turn when it comes to his daily survival. The fast food, the McDonald's, the KFC, the 12 Diet Cokes a day isn't just a bad diet. Insiders revealed it stems from a lifelong, deep-seated fear of being poisoned. Fast food is safe because it's prepared anonymously. He exercises that same absolute physical control over his appearance. He self-styles his hair with heavy spray, and his wife, Melania, is the only human being allowed to cut it. His whole PR game is just as calculated. Way back in 1987, he spelled it out in his own words. I play to people's fantasies. I call it truthful hyperbole. To him, loyalty to a party didn't mean anything if it didn't give him leverage. That's why he just bounced around, shifting his political party affiliation 5 different times between 1969 and 2012. Moving from Republican to the Reform Party, over to the Democrats, back to the Republicans, an independent, and finally back to the GOP. He didn't serve a party. He made the party serve his trajectory. When you look past the standard political noise and analyze his actual legacy, it's clear he didn't just participate in the system. He completely rewired it. Think about the traditional Republican establishment before he arrived. Before him, guys like Reagan or the Bushes played by the rules. They were polite, wore the nice suits, and respected the system. Trump broke that mold in half. He single-handedly shifted the entire platform into a populist, protectionist, America First movement, fueled by the working class. And the structural changes he carved into the government are going to outlive us all. During his first presidency, he secured a conservative judicial supermajority by appointing 3 Supreme Court justices: Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. But he didn't stop there. He packed the courts with 234 federal judges, fundamentally altering the trajectory of American constitutional law for an entire generation. You'd think the traditional gatekeepers of media would have controlled the narrative, right? Not even close. Trump bypassed the mainstream press entirely, commanding a peak of 88 million followers on Twitter before his ban in 2021. And when they cut him off, he simply built his own playground. Truth Social. When that platform went public in 2024, it wildly inflated his net worth by over $4 billion. But perhaps the most distinct mechanic of his legacy is his unique ability to weaponize infamy. In August of 2023, he became the first former president to have a mugshot taken inside a Fulton County jail. For any normal politician, that's an instant career-ending catastrophe. But Trump? Within just 48 hours, he put that exact mugshot on t-shirts and posters and used it to raise $7.1 million in direct campaign funds. He takes the very weapons meant to destroy him and turns them into raw leverage. When you step back and look at the full picture, it's a timeline that honestly defies logic. A germaphobic, fast-food-eating reality TV star and WWE Hall of Famer who stared down $3.4 billion in corporate debt. A man who survived a failed board game, 6 corporate bankruptcies, 2 impeachments, an assassin's bullet, and 34 felony convictions, only to twice seize the most powerful office on the face of the planet. It forces us to look at the modern world and ask a deeply critical question, looking strictly at the hard data. From the billion-dollar collapses of the 1990s to completely rewriting American political history, does his story prove that playing by the rules and being a polite expert just doesn't work anymore? Or is he simply the most relentless, I don't care what you think survivor in modern history? Think about it and drop your thoughts below.